Today I'm back in Belle Harbor over by the Haulover Inlet, and every time I come to this spot I always wonder why I don't come here every single week, because I love this spot. It really is a beautiful area to shoot videos. You see a ton of things with the water, the boats, the walking path back here is just perfect for coming out here and talking about how nobody wants to repay their student loan bills, guys. And when I saw this today, I can't say I was totally surprised, but I just I don't know how to explain the emotion. When I first saw it, I kept thinking, I knew somebody was going to come up with something like this in order to try to get out of this, right? Because we know that the student loan payments are going to be resuming this fall, and people are looking for ways to get out of this, guys. Well, they know that Biden's not going to save them anymore because even if the Supreme Court decision goes through and they approve his forgiveness program, where they're going to forgive up to $20,000 in debt, that's only going to forgive that portion of it, and many people owe 6 figures or higher in student loan debt. So even for getting $20,000 forgiven when you owe 150 grand is not really that much. As much as that helps, it doesn't go far enough for many people. But there are some people now who are organizing and saying they're just not gonna pay, guys. When the student loan payments resume, basically how this is gonna work, starting September 1st, interest will start accruing once again, because it has not been accruing since 2020 when they put the pause in place for nobody making payments, right? But payments are supposed to resume in August. And even that sounds a little shady, right? Because I remember hearing before that payments were supposed to be resuming now in June. But anyways, they're just saying that they're just not gonna pay. And people are saying actually that they're not gonna pay even if they can afford to. Some people are just not gonna pay out of principle, guys. Here's the situation. More than 40 million Americans are gonna have to start paying back these loans in the fall. But it turns out, even before the pandemic, about 60% of all student loan borrowers were not actually making payments, guys. So this is gonna hit really, really hard. And that's why I keep talking about this, because it's such a big story, 40 million Americans, that is a huge chunk of the US population that's affected by this, as well as the fact that now you have people coming out and saying straight up that they're just not gonna pay when the payment's gonna resume. Well, what kind of effects is this gonna have on, people's credits, the ability to borrow, the effect on the economy when it comes to spending? Because one of the big things that we've talked about is that, the student loan debt, on average, people have about $400 a month in payments that are going to be resuming, and that's money that's currently being spent in the economy right now. But when the payments resume, that money will no longer be spent in the economy. Now, this one woman named Jackie seems to be the forefront of this story, and she says she doesn't even remember how much she borrowed initially, but since interest has been accruing on her balance since she first took out the loans, she now owes about $100,000 in student loan debt. And she says her credit has been ruined because she refuses to make loan payments at the expense of providing for her children. So she's just choosing not to pay and have horrible credit instead. That's pretty much the decision she's making. She said that she's never made a payment on her student loans and that she never will, and it's ruined her credit, but she doesn't care. She said she's an underpaid teacher and she's not going to spend any of her money on predatory, unconstitutional loans, and I'm not going to take away from my family. What do you guys think about that? Do you think Jackie is correct in her thinking there? I mean, on the one hand, I can see where she's coming from. Having all this interest accruing on these loans and never really being able to get out from under them. Like we talked about the other day, the guy that took out student loans 40 years ago in the amount of 70 grand, and now he still owes 200 something thousand dollars after 40 years of making payments. So it could be something that you can never get out of in some cases. So in that respect, it is wrong that people get stuck in these situations just because they're trying to get a better education for themselves and their families. However, you did agree to take that debt, and you knew what you were getting yourself into when you took the debt. You know, you're over 18, you're old enough to sign a contract, and now people are saying, well, wait a minute, I don't agree anymore. I'm not going to pay. This is why people end up in court, people get sued, and all sorts of things like that happen, because you have two parties that agree to some sort of legal contract, and then someone decides they're not going to abide by it anymore. So now this teacher, she's trying to start a business and start working for herself, because she knows that the government will likely start garnishing her wages to pay this back, and having this business will help. But I don't understand this mentality, guys. If you know that the government is going to garnish your wages, they're going to get their money one way or the other, right? It's not like you're getting out of paying this debt because you can't file for bankruptcy. They're just finding a different way to take it from you, since you won't give it over voluntarily. So I don't see how this helps or makes the problem better. I feel like it's kind of walking away from a huge problem in your life and not addressing it, which obviously I'm not a fan of. And she's saying that everybody in this situation needs to band together, and all 40+ million Americans that are going to start paying student loans should revolt and not pay. But here's the thing, guys, like, you know, you think that's a lot of money to pay back? If everybody's so worried about unconstitutional takings of your money, why don't you start looking at taxes, okay? Because we are taxed up the wazoo on every single thing that we buy, okay? Even your income that you earn. Any way that you make money or spend money, the government taxes you, okay? So if you want to revolt against something, everybody should be revolting against paying any sort of tax anymore. So that would really save you a lot more money, and you'd have plenty of money left over to pay for these student loans. You know what I'm saying? They can't throw everybody in jail for tax evasion. And it's something that everyone could jump on board with, because every single US citizen pays taxes, whereas only a fraction of us have student loan debt. Now there's another guy, he's 53 years old, out of Rhode Island, and he took out $60,000 in debt initially, and he's been making steady payments for about a decade now, but now he owes $100,000, which is very similar to the story I covered a few days ago. And he says that since the student loan payments have been on pause, he's been using the extra money towards his children's needs and repairing his home. So basically, spend the money on other things, right? That's money that's being spent in the economy right now, making things look better than they really are artificially. And he's another one that says when the pause ends, he's not going to continue making payments. And he says his feelings towards it are, because you can't file bankruptcy and get out of these student loans, that this makes it an illegitimate loan. But an illegitimate loan that you signed on for and agreed to pay back when you took out the loan, right? I mean, we know what happens when you don't pay any other type of loan. If you don't pay your car payment, the car gets repossessed. If you don't pay your mortgage payment, your house goes into foreclosure and they take it. So what are they going to take away from people for not paying these student loans if enough people start doing this? You think the government's just going to sit back and do nothing? These guys can change anything with the stroke of a pen, and they'll probably find a way to make your life miserable, is my guess. They will do something that will make your life so terrible that you will pay it back. That's what I think would happen anyways. He says that I refuse to be an indentured servant to this loan. I've done nothing wrong other than go to college for a higher education. I'm a valuable contributor to society and deserve the same consumer protections that go with any other consumer loan. But this is not any other consumer loan. And people knew this when they got that loan. And he says he's less concerned about the potential consequences from this and more concerned about actually making payments on a loan where the balance continues going up instead of down when he makes payments. So that's his number one concern, is that it's like this never-ending game. You're just constantly paying and paying and paying and getting nowhere. Now here's another case. You have a woman named Ashley. She's out of Georgia. She borrowed $25,000 to pay for a master's degree and get into nursing. And she is a registered nurse now. She's in the same boat where now her student loan balance is $113,000, guys. and she's 56 years old. This is like having a mortgage. She said that she has deferred the loan payments multiple times because she could not afford to make the payments. She says that the loans have been bought and sold so many different times to different loan servicers, kind of like mortgages are. They're just constantly bought and sold and given to different companies. And she says that now she's saddled with debt that will haunt her and keep her working until the day she dies. Now, that's a pretty bleak outlook, because on top of that, she says she has no savings, no IRA, she lives paycheck to paycheck, and this degree is nowhere near worth the price that she's being charged for it, and she's planning to apply for deferment again, and if the request is denied, she's not going to pay. She can't afford to. She doesn't have the money, she says. So I feel more bad for people in this situation where they literally cannot afford to make the payments versus people that are just flat out saying, I'm not going to pay, right? I mean, there's no real sympathy for that, at least not from me. But when the debt balloons so far out of control and you're working and you're using the degree that you got and you can no longer afford to pay, that's a tragedy, guys. And I feel bad for people like this, and I don't know what they're going to do. But look, even if the Biden loan forgiveness thing went through, I mean, this woman has $113,000 in debt and climbing. At best, that would only wipe away $20,000 of it, which is barely putting a dent in it. She would still owe, you know, almost $100,000. So what actually happens if people stop making these payments? What are the consequences of this? Well, once the pause ends, anybody who decides not to pay, they'll end up in default, and this can really damage your credit score beyond recognition, really, and it can exclude you from future government benefits. You know, so forget about if you need food stamps one day, or you're trying to get a grant, first-time home buyer grant, something like that. All that stuff's going to be off the table for people like this that decide not to pay, because these loans are owned by the government. But it gets worse, because once the loan is in default, the government can collect the loan by seizing a portion of the borrower's wages, which is garnishing your wages, seizing their tax refund money, or seizing a portion of the borrower's Social Security benefits, so even robbing your retirement later on. So these guys have all the power in the world, like I said, to get their money back one way or another. So if you think that just not paying is going to just make it all go away, and the only thing that's going to happen is my credit report's going to be messed up, think again, guys. They will take money from every single place possible, and my guess is that if this ends up not being enough, if they take your Social Security and they take your tax return money and all of this, and it ends up not being enough, then they will probably figure out new laws and new ways to charge you even more, okay? That's probably what's going to happen. Like I said, they'll find a way to make your life so miserable that you'll have no choice but to pay. That's what they do with taxes, right? If you don't pay taxes, eventually it catches up to you to the point where you end up in prison. And they have made some famous examples out of this in the past. You know, remember this happened to Wesley Snipes. He went to prison for tax evasion. It's the same thing they got Al Capone for back in the day, guys. They couldn't pin him on, you know, running drugs or bootlegging or murder or anything, but what they did get him on, they got him on tax evasion, and he died in prison. Okay, so that's what they do. They find ways to make your life miserable and put you away. Who knows? Maybe that will be the thing that they'll do. Maybe they will start implementing jail time. Guys, like, you may end up going to prison over this by voluntarily not paying. If you can't prove financial hardship, you know, when you stop paying voluntarily, then that might be the end of the road for you. Maybe that'll be on your way to prison. They'll turn that into a federal offense. And apparently the only way to get the student loan discharged through bankruptcy is you have to be able to prove undue hardship, which includes looking at past efforts to repay. So if you're voluntarily not repaying, you're automatically not going to win that one. And you have to be able to show your present and future inability to repay. So, you know, the burden of proof is always on you when it comes to the courtroom. So if you're trying to get out of this through bankruptcy, the only way to do that is to show that you're flat broke, and you'll always be flat broke. And if that's the life you want to live, that sounds miserable. So the advice here is definitely to get a lawyer if this is something that you're trying to do, to make sure you don't completely screw up your life even further. And one concern is that because these student loans are traded back and forth just like mortgages are to different loan servicing companies that people might start receiving bills in the mail from companies that they don't recognize. Your servicer may have changed from the time that the pause took place until now, and people might not pay because they don't recognize the bill. So one thing you have to confirm, if this is you and you start getting these bills in the mail from different loan servicers, is you have to confirm if this is legitimate or not, because you got to watch out for scams as well. I can already see the headlines coming this fall of how many people get duped by paying fake student loan payments from a fake loan servicer. So I can already guarantee that's going to happen. Man, people are always asking, like, it doesn't look like I'm dropping an ounce of sweat. Well, look at me now, guys. Like, whew, it is so hot out here today, I can't even describe it. It is just suffocatingly hot, okay? Sweat's dripping from my head and on my shirt. Everything is wet. But Bank of America, they know that these student loan payments are gonna be a problem when they resume in the fall. And they're already predicting there's gonna be massive defaults on everything, not just people not paying the student loans, but people not paying all other types of loans, credit card loans, auto loans, mortgages, you name it, because this is going to be such a financial burden for people. And as you can see, based on the balances that some of these people have, it's like having a second mortgage. So it is substantial in many cases. I've already reported that credit card delinquencies and auto loan delinquencies have been on the rise, and it's getting to the point, guys, where 90-day delinquencies on all these different loans are now above pre-pandemic levels. And think about this, the repayments haven't even begun yet, but delinquencies are already past pre-pandemic levels. That is terrifying, because just imagine what's going to happen when the repayments begin. This is going to be the catalyst, guys. Like, everybody who keeps saying that everything is fine and there's nothing to worry about in the economy, this is it right here. This is a torpedo headed for our submarine. You know what I'm saying? It's going to explode. There's no way that we're going to be able to get through this without a hiccup. And surprisingly, we've gotten along pretty good since the Fed has been rising interest rates, as well as, you know, the bank failures and different things like that. So far, things haven't imploded yet. But how many things can we throw at this until it does? Is kind of what I'm thinking. Bank of America is estimating that delinquencies are going to rise by about 67% once the student loan repayments go back into full swing. And as of right now, this very moment, before the payments even resume, 1 in 13 student loan debtors are behind on some other type of payment right now, and that's according to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Imagine where that number is going to be when the loan payments do resume, guys. Like, this is going to be a huge problem. In fact, people who are saying they're going to skip out on the loan payments, just missing one student loan payment can have such an impact on your credit score that it can bring it down by 49 to 82 points in one shot just from missing one payment, guys. So imagine what would happen to your credit score you know, if you miss 2 or 3 payments. You won't have a credit score left, right? You're going to be at the complete bottom. And before you think, oh, that's not a big deal, I don't care about my credit score, well, just think about it, guys. You're not going to be able to get credit cards. You're not going to be able to get a loan for a car. Everybody who's been dying to buy a house, you might as well forget about that unless you can save up enough cash, because no one's going to give you a loan when your credit score goes down to this level. That's what people need to think about from this, is there's going to be massive financial consequences that will follow you around for a lifetime, potentially, if you decide to skip out on this. And I've covered in the past couple weeks that, you know, there are some people that have been using this pause in the accrual of interest to pay down their debt substantially and save enough money where they can pay back a lot of it when the payments do resume, and all sorts of things like that. So some people have been very responsible with this, and maybe they're going to be okay, you know, because they've been planning for this. But people who have just been going out to the movies and spending the extra money on partying and Airbnbs, vacations, and all of this, and think that that lifestyle is going to continue, it's not. Because next time you go to charge that credit card on Airbnb or the airlines, chances are it's going to say denied, guys, because your credit score is down the drain. You know what I'm saying? So you got to think this one through. You know, people say, oh, I want to provide for my family. Well, how are you going to provide for your family if your credit score is garbage. And let's not forget, even if you're not planning on buying a home, when you want to rent a place, landlord checks your credit score, they might not rent to you, right? You need to get insurance on your car or homeowner's insurance or any type of insurance. They check your credit score and they charge people more. I'm not saying it's right, but that's what they do. And I'm just telling you that having a bad credit score impacts everything you do financially in a negative way. So I just don't see what's the end game with people who are going to be just blowing this off like it's nothing, because I think they're going to be having a lifetime of regret for doing this. Instead of like, you know what, I went to college and the whole point of going to college is to get a good job and make a lot of money, and you know, now I should be doing that and paying back this loan, guys, or should have been taking advantage of these 3 years of no interest accumulation, which was a huge advantage for anybody who was smart enough to take advantage of that. But only the smart ones did. And Bank of America is predicting this is going to be such a problem that when the payments do resume, that there's going to be about $167 billion worth of seriously delinquent balances on all different types of loans, guys. And this will increase household debt by 67%. That's the torpedo hitting the submarine right there, if you ask me. That's the death blow. There's no way our economy is going to be able to recover from this when 40 million people are going to be affected by this thing. And these are all people that are supposed to be buying homes and starting families and paying off their other bills. It's not going to happen, guys. So let me know what you guys think about this. Do you think this is going to be no big deal? Do you think that these people are just bluffing, and whenever the bills come and the threatening phone calls or letters start happening, that they're going to start paying? Or do you think there's going to be this massive revolt like they're saying, and it's going to have, you know, millions of people not refusing to pay back their student loan debt? And what are going to be the consequences from this, guys? Let me know what you think. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.